part of the reason I don't provide links for papers is not because I'm being lazy, but because when I was a student, when you went to search for the paper, you actually found 3 or 4 more around there were actually interested, and I pulled those off the shelf too. And so I actually think by not providing every single thing they need for their customer service needs.
You're basically creating free thinkers in the school, which college is literally supposed to be for.
It seems to me when I talk to academics, or we talk to academics, and we interview them, they broadly fall into 2 camps. There's 2 people. There's the camp that says the academy can be saved. There's the other camp which says the academy is beyond saving. We need to build new academies. I realise that's essentially a binary choice I'm presenting you with. Are you in one camp or another, or is there a third way?
Well, I don't think you left any room for a third way.
I'll tell you a third way, actually, just to add some nuance to this. So I guess what we were posing is like Ralston College in Savannah, Georgia, they're building a new thing from the ground up.
Yes.
University of Austin, similar. There are other people who work within institutions. I was in Grand Junction in Colorado, and they have a relatively small college there. And they don't do either. They're not like massive, obsessed with DEI or anything like that, but they're also not aggressively against any of it. They just do things their own way.
Yeah.
And maybe that's the third way.
Yeah, I consider that the first way, which is reforming the institutions we already have, right? So I think there's a question of, as if this were a house, do we refurbish what we have, or do we start with new construction? And, maybe the market's going to tell us a little bit of both, and what the optimal mix is, I don't know. My inclination is to try to refurbish what we have, although I'm very supportive of what University of Austin is trying to do. And here is a third way. The people who are doing the research could just care less about what other people think. Every big movement, people had to have sacrifice. So either you believe in truth and you're willing to pay some personal cost, or you don't.
At one point in history, or at one point in our society, there was one job of researchers, and it was to make groundbreaking discoveries that better humanity. The reason I'm bringing this up is because this guy, Roland Fryer, is a researcher in, I believe, the humanities department, and he was publishing papers on police brutality of minority communities. He actually found evidence or results that showed or proved that there wasn't any detrimental effect towards the African American community in regards to police brutality. And the backlash he faced with that was crazy. But at a point in time, that was the job of a researcher. The job of a researcher was to challenge ideals that already existed. And you may be thinking, oh, what makes you say this? I'm literally studying to get a master's degree in electrical engineering now. What that is I do research. I am here to do research. That's what my scholarship is for. I need to make groundbreaking discoveries or new discoveries in the field of engineering to prove that I'm a master at this. That's what you do. You become a master by challenging ideals. And when he did that, to prove that police brutality wasn't necessarily hurting the black community, that's what his research proved. This is not me saying this. He faced so much backlash, which at a point in time, that was your job as a researcher, to go against the status quo and to find something new. It's just kind of crazy how the times have changed. But let's get into it. I hope you enjoy this video.
If we were arguing about, some social issue, we would say, well, yes, we could have this policy or that policy, or they could just work harder, right? And so in this case, why are we letting the scholars off the hook? So maybe that's the third choice, is you can go into this realizing, maybe I won't win all the awards that I could if I made the results seem more coherent to the day's politics. Maybe that's okay. And maybe if there's enough of those people, that becomes the new thing to actually tell the truth, right? Someone said the other day, I got a note saying, I really liked your interview on XYZ. Authenticity is in. And I thought, what does that even mean? Right?
I can tell you exactly what it means. We are in the authenticity moment. This is why new media is taking off the way it is, because you know, if you think about what TV is, it's a bunch of fake people having a fake
Yes.
conversation in
Yes.
a fake room. This is the exact opposite,
Yeah.
right? We're just talking straight, and I think this is the moment for authenticity. The flaw
But
in
then
your
why
argument.
why can't the academics be
Well,
authentic?
this is the flaw in your argument, right? Because I agree with you 100% about people just need to man up and tell the truth and pursue the truth and do the work that they're actually supposed to do. On the other hand, you're an economist, and you know that human beings respond to incentives first and foremost. And if it's not a high status thing to do, if it's not a money-making thing to do, if it's not a blah, blah, blah. And look at universities. I mean, I mentioned DEI. They're not even hiring or recruiting people based on merit. So if you have an institution that operates in that way, why would the people in it pursue the truth at any cost? I mean, that's not reflective of how people work.
Well, so let me push back. This
Okay.
is fun. Well, incentives matter, but what economists really believe is that people maximize utility. So then the question is, why isn't it that the academics care enough about pursuing the truth? Right? Yes, incentives on the margin matter here or there. And yes, I agree the incentives are pointing in the opposite direction. But if you look at some of the things that people are, how wild, this is where we started. Why are things, who gets to change the narrative? Why do things swing wildly one way and wildly the other way? Maybe, you called it man up. I'm going to call it, maybe people ought to have a North Star.
Sure.
That maybe we've lost that compass, that driving force that said, it doesn't matter. If I find that this group is to blame for something, I'm going to say it. If I find another group is to blame for that, or that's what the empirical evidence says, I'm going to say it, right? And then, yes, let's get the universities to back you up, to provide support for that. Can we go this far? Encourage that, right? That's what I had when I first got to Harvard. I had a president who not only said this is okay, but actually encouraged the work. Right? And so I think encouragement within the university could go a long way. But I also believe that, maybe we should be selecting different people to go into the academy.
Do you think is...
I love it.
Is that a wrap?
I mean,
And that's crazy that he's saying that in modern times. He's basically saying academia is catering to students who don't deserve it. And that's kind of, I guess, the fundamental floor of DEI in a sense. And and being a student, I can kind of see that, where he's coming from, I can kind of see that. And it's kind of sad because our goal should be to make the country better. And I'm unsure about how catering to students will necessarily do that. Of course, cater to their needs and their wants too. But when it gets to the point where you're babying or spoiling people, that's where a problem comes in.
it works for me.
Yeah.
Francis got more and more questions.
One more question, which is, how much do you think this is? And I've seen it because I used to work I used to work in teaching, and people being afraid of their own students. How big of a problem is that?
Again, I don't know. And I'm not even sure people are afraid of their own students. Maybe they are. It could be that the incentives to do the right thing when it comes to grading or putting pressure on students to study for this or that are just not there. Earlier in my career, I was a hardliner on, I said the papers were due at 5 o'clock, 5:01, I don't take them. And I didn't say you had to turn it in 5. You could have turned it in 3 weeks ago if you wanted to, but 5 o'clock is the deadline. I'm softer on that now, not because I'm scared of the students, but because it's 5:03. Do I want the headache that this is going to cause?
Yeah.
Right? Because the incentives are very different. So I think distinguishing between those two is really important. I think that I think we actually oftentimes can bend over backwards so much that you actually do the students a disservice.
Mm-hmm.
Let me give you a tiny, tiny example that means nothing. You teach a course and you say, hey, you should read Gary Becker's dissertation on the economics of discrimination. It's published in 1957. See you next class period. Professor, could you provide a link to that? Could you send us around a link? No, just go find it. But that students are now becoming used to a level of customer service that is such that, everything is just really laid out for them very, very carefully. And it's more like problem set solving than deep thinking. You have a paper. How many words should it be? What exactly it's like, why don't you decide the answers to those questions? So part of the reason I don't provide links for papers is not because I'm being lazy, but because when I was a student, when you went to search for the paper, you actually found 3 or 4 more around there were actually interested, and I pulled those off the shelf too. And so I actually think by not providing every single thing they need for their customer service needs,
You're basically creating free thinkers in the school, which college is literally supposed to be for. College should be to create free thinkers. Don't get me wrong, there are still certain things as a student that you just need to know that a professor should tell you regarding your class. There are fundamental ideals that you need to know that a professor should just tell you. But when it comes to higher level education and higher level academics, I'm assuming, because he sounds like he teaches higher level, maybe seniors or sophomores in college, or maybe grad students. That's what he sounds like right now, a grad professor. You need to know how to find things on your own. It's just what it is. That's actually what a PhD is. You just do research. And that's the best way to learn, because when you expose yourself to getting things on your own, when you expose yourself to having to find knowledge, that's when you learn the most.
you actually sometimes can provide a better education.
Roland, it's been an absolute pleasure having you on. We're going to ask you a bunch of questions from our supporters in a second, but we always wrap up with the same question, which is, what's the one thing we're not talking about as a society that you think we should be?
Before Roland...
Yeah, that was a good talk. Make sure you guys check out Roland Fryer. It's LFR Jojo, and I'll see you guys in the next one. Peace.